The 2021 census question on religion. Does the tick-the-box format affect results? Should religion be optional? Well, Michael Nugent, chairperson of Atheist Ireland, is with me. Michael, good morning.
Good morning.
What's your issue with the current way, the last way we did the religion question on the census?
Well, the purpose of the census should be to find the most accurate information. And there's a science to designing questionnaires to do that. And one of the basic principles is you don't build into the question something that's going to prompt people to answer in a certain way, because that's going to prejudice the outcomes.
So what was the question?
Well, the question, first of all, is what is your religion? So that assumes that you have a religion. Now, it's been shown in studies in other countries that if you ask people what is your religion, they'll typically give a religion, maybe the religion that they grew up in, or maybe a religion that they have now. But if you ask the same people, do you have a religion, or do you practice a religion, they're more likely to say no and reflect their current situation rather than their historical one. So the question
should be, as in a lot of forms that you fill in for a driving license or anything else, do you have a religion? Tick yes or tick no. If yes, then go to part B.
Yes, and then you would ask them what the religion is. Now, there's a further problem there, which is that for over a century, up to 2002, you wrote in your religion. There was just a square or a rectangle that you write in what your religion is. Now, in 2002, they changed that and they put a series of check boxes. So they had the top 5 religions based on the previous results. Roman Catholic, Church of Ireland, Presbyterian, Methodist, and then there was the, Orthodox and Muslim kind of vying for the last place. Now, what that does in practice is, if you, again, let's say you grow up as a Catholic, but you're not a Catholic anymore. If you see a box there saying Catholic, you might be tempted to just tick it because of convenience or because of habit.
But if you tick no in the first question, which you want to put in, would that not arise then?
That would resolve the question of whether you have a religion. But then there's another question, which is the proportions of the religions. Because I'll give you an example. When the tick boxes were introduced in 2002, all of the religions that had been reducing gradually, Church of Ireland, Presbyterian, Methodist, Catholic to a slightly different extent because of its dominance, they had all been reducing gradually from 1960 onwards. Methodist is the most pronounced. It went from about 7,000 down to 5,000 gradually over those decades. Then when it got a checkbox, Methodist almost doubled to 10,000. And then when it lost its checkbox two censuses later, because Orthodox had overtaken it, it almost halved, back to 6,000 from 12,000. So having the checkbox clearly prejudices people to take a checkbox.
It demonstrates that the gathering of the information at best is inconsistent and at worst is inaccurate.
Yeah, and doesn't match as well, we know, with the reality of church attendances, with marriages, with baptisms, etc.
Okay, but you do want to find out the proportion of people who have a particular religion, I presume.
Well, we want to find out.
It's interesting information that we should have.
Well, it depends again on what you want the information for. The purpose of the census should be to get information that's useful for the state.
Yes, so for planning the construction of schools and the kinds of schools and so on, you'd like to know.
Yeah, so there's a nuance that we think is important as well, that instead of asking what is your religion, or do you have a religion, we think that it should be asking, do you practice a religion? Because it's practice of religion that's most relevant to...
But then you have to define practice. Does going to church at Easter and Christmas and maybe Paddy's Day or whatever, does that constitute practice?
Well, what they have in the Irish language question is they have a follow-on question, which is, first is, do you speak Irish? And the second is, how frequently do you speak Irish? Daily, weekly, monthly, less often. So they could do the same thing to capture those nuances with religion.
Okay, so you ask people, do you have a religion? If yes, how often do you practice your religion? Is it weekly, monthly, da-da-da-da-da? But then you still need to know, or do you, the denominational nature of your practice. So do you want to know Protestant, Church of Ireland, Presbyterian, Methodist, and so on and so forth?
Well, it would be useful to know in terms of planning. Say, for example, if there's an area where you can anticipate, okay, there's going to be need for a mosque in this area in X years because of the growth of the Muslim population there. So there would be factors where it would be useful for the state in planning terms to know that type of information.
But then we get down to, I mean, if you simply put Muslim then the Shia might decide, I don't want to be joined up with these Sunni people.
Yeah,
and then you've got Jews, Orthodox Jews and Hasidic Jews, and then you have the Scientologists and the Moonies and all the rest of them. They'll want their little box.
Yeah, that's another change that they brought in since 2002. Before that, you were asked, what's your denomination? And now they've changed it to religion, but they mix up religion and denomination. And it is quite significant because, again, if you take the planning purpose, let's say schools, which is one of the main areas that is affected by it. The Department of Education will say, well, there are Catholic schools, but there are also minority schools. There's Church of Ireland schools and there's Muslim schools. But the Church of Ireland schools discriminate against evangelicals. And the Muslim schools are Sunni schools, so they discriminate against Ahmadi Muslims. So you need that level of nuance to understand if you are providing things that are relevant for particular religious beliefs. There's another issue as well, which is to hugely oversimplify. There's about 80% say they're Catholic, there's about 10% say they've no religion, and there's about 10% say they're minority faiths. There's actually slightly more no religion than all the minority faiths put together. But there's a huge amount of nuance put into the beliefs of the minority faiths, but none into the bigger figure of non-religious philosophical beliefs. And in terms of what used to be known as...
Does that impact on anything? I mean, if you happen to be a humanist, you're not looking for a humanist church, you're not looking for a humanist school, you're not looking for a humanist grocer. So is the information, as you say, useful or not?
Well, there's an issue in terms of what used to be known as freedom of religion is now increasingly known in human rights terms as freedom of religion and belief. And the belief part refers to non-religious philosophical worldviews. And the European Court has found that, for example, things like vegetarian or veganism count as philosophical worldviews that have the same right to respect by the state as religious philosophical beliefs.
You have got to be kidding.
No, that's if you think about it, and any worldview that is a coherent worldview that includes values that you live your life by.
Do I deserve a box?
It's not a question of boxes. We're against boxes. It's a question of people writing down what their own belief system is. But isn't the whole idea of the boxes to make the collating of the data much simpler? The computer reads it. You don't need human frailty perusing these forms when you can have a machine reading the forms and you get the data much quicker. I mean, if you were depending on humans reading the forms, we still wouldn't have the data from the last census. Well, it's not humans reading the forms. At this stage, it's scanned anyway. I mean, On Post now uses OCR, address scanners. So the technology has come on significantly. For over 40% of the questions of the census already have a write-in element and 20% of them are already fully written in. So you're right, they are doing it probably for convenience, but at the cost of accuracy.
But the idea that, a worldview, whatever it might be, pacifism, I mentioned earlier, being anti-nuclear, being anti-climate change, and a climate change denier, which is a minority but a view out there as well. I mean, how many of these things would you need to take into account?
Well, however many there are. I mean, the point of it is to find out what people live their lives by and how relevant that is to the planning needs of the state. It's not to dictate to people what they should believe. It's asking people what they do believe.
The right to burn turf.
Well, if it is it has to be under the European Court of Human Rights. It has to be a coherent worldview that dictates how you live your life.
Yeah. This text, no need to be detailed asking people if they practice or not. Just ask if they have religion, and if they do, they can tick a few boxes of religions that Irish people recognise or write it down. If there's none in the choices, make it simple. But the whole idea was to avoid as much writing in as possible, isn't that the idea?
Well, no, the idea should be to get the most accurate results. Now, obviously, there's a trade-off between practicality and accuracy, so you'll never get 100% accuracy. But the resources involved in going back to the write-in that was already there, given that 40% of the questions anyway are write-in, we believe is justified in order to get the accurate results.
JD in Dublin says, food, exercise and consumerism are the new religions. Why not have boxes for them?
Well, again, it's not a question of boxes. The point is to get away from boxes. The point is to ask people to answer the question objectively. There's a science to questionnaires, and the distinction that's in the terminology of the trade is between spontaneous answers, which is you're just asked and you give your answer, and prompted answers, which is it's suggested.
You're trying not to prompt.
Exactly, yeah.
Question, cheeky question, says our texter. How often do atheists practice? 24/7, except in the night when the demons come.
Well, funnily enough, atheists are actually, statistically speaking, less likely to be, say, worried about dying, less likely to go to prison, more likely to have a range of positive outcomes that people normally associate with religion.
Based on the fact that 80% would profess, prompted, albeit, to be of the majority religion, what's your view about the Pope's visit and the state lending a financial hand?
Well, first of all, absolutely no problem with the Pope coming. He's quite entitled to come and practice whatever religion that he wants. The state should not be involved, and it's not a state visit. The Vatican is not a state. It doesn't have any of the attributes of a state. It doesn't have a population. It doesn't have an economy.
It does have a diplomatic corps.
It has a kind of a fiction that people go along with that enables it to hide behind diplomatic immunity when it's charged with sex crimes, but it doesn't have any of the other attributes of a state. It's kind of like a chameleon entity, that it's a state when it suits it and it's a religion when it suits it. So he should come over as the head of a religion, do whatever religion activities he wants with his own religious people, but the state should stay out of it.
So there should never be a state visit, per se?
No.
Tom in Newcastle West says, I just wrote Jedi in the religious section. Joanna Wickler says, what if kids are raised to faiths, such as my children, both Church of Ireland and Muslim? In the last census, I couldn't really reflect this.
Yeah, that's, well, one of the things that they could do, if it was just a box, they could write in both. But if they're forced to tick something, then they have to choose one.
The person who's reading the box, or even the machine, is going to be very confused that you're, I am Church of Ireland, stroke Muslim. Because, I mean, can you be both?
Well, I mean...
This one here on the text just says, I'm a Catholic Hindu Krishna.
Well, the whole, I mean, I don't want to be trying to defend the rationality of religion, but I mean, people are entitled to believe what they want. If somebody says that that's what they believe, then that's what they believe.
All right, well, it's an interesting conversation, and your motivation in all of this is just to get the most accurate and useful information possible from the 2021 census.
Yes, it's one of the differences between us and some of the religious groups that are lobbying the CSO, is we're not looking for things that will suit us, we're looking for things that will be accurate. In the same way as, for example, in education, we're not looking for atheist schools, we're looking for schools that will be neutral.
All right. Well, you're looking for perfection in the census, Michael. Michael Nugent he's the chairperson of Atheist Ireland. But coming up next on the programme, believe it or not, Michael, we're looking at the pressure of being perfect. That's next.